This podcast is a proud member of the Fan Hub 100. Football without fans is nothing, so we've partnered with Fan Hub to put fans first. Search Fan Hub app to play your part in the journey.
Welcome back to another Speak Sunderland podcast. This week is slightly different. As I'm sure many of you are aware, Sunderland's game against Blackpool, which was due to take place today, was postponed due to international call-ups. Conor McLaughlin, Tom Flanagan and Jim Adgley, as I've been told by Nick, that's how it's pronounced, are all away on international duty. Joining me today are two Sunderland supporters. First of all, Michael Bowers, part of SAFC Fan TV and a YouTuber himself. A link to his channel will be somewhere in the description. It's been a while since you've been on one of these, Michael. How are you getting on?
I'm doing all right. Obviously, I'm sure we'll dissect Sunderland's start, but at the moment, I can't complain, mate. Things have been worse, so I'm doing all right. Yourself?
Not bad. You enjoying your Sunderland free weekend, or are you hoping they will play?
Well, wait and see how the other results get on later, and then I'll have an opinion on whether we should have played or not.
Also joining us this morning is Sky Sports presenter Tom White. Very busy over the last few weeks, I would imagine, with all the transfer dealings and whatnot. How are you getting on, Tom? You well?
Very well, thank you. I do wish we had a game today, but I think it was probably the right decision to call it off. Looking at the defence now.
Yeah, probably.
Just before we get into anything, I've actually noticed the Blackpool is still playing Ipswich today. I'm not sure if any of you know how that's actually been arranged.
I think it's because Charlton and Nick each other this weekend as well, and I would guess that because Ipswich's game's been postponed, they might have thought, well, Blackpool's not playing, we're not playing. Let's just save ourselves a game down the line. That's what I think it. But I can't say that with any authority.
We've got a few things to cover today, and we will eventually get around to talking to Sunderland and their start of the season. But before we get into it, we at Speak Sunderland have partnered with Fan Hub. And if you don't already, I'd recommend following them on Twitter. Over the next week, they're going to be releasing their own app, which will reward you for supporting your club. You'll earn rewards for interacting with content. Obviously, further down the line, when fans are allowed back into stadiums, you'll be able to check into stadiums, earn rewards, and over the course of the season, track how far you've travelled to watch the lads. So, at FanHub_football on Twitter. I'd check that out if I was you. A little bit of a promo there. But one of the things I've covered in the article for them, which just went out today, was the salary cap and my thoughts on it. And I'll get into what I thought about it in a short while. But Tom, when the salary cap was announced, what were your initial thoughts about it?
I'm not against the salary cap at all, but I don't think it's enforceable. I don't see how it can be enforceable. I don't think they can't give clubs they gave clubs just a matter of weeks to completely, in our case anyway, completely slash their wage bill by a huge percentage. Now I know they've decided to counter that by making it an average wage, but to me, I think it's unenforceable. I think that if we ended up getting done by it, I think if we fought it, we would win. I think they should have given clubs a few more years for it to come in, or have a completely different system where it takes into account what your money incoming is, like the size of the stadium, the amount of fans coming to the ground, etc. That should have definitely been taken into account. I think the current system, although I am completely for a salary cap, I'm completely against the way it's been currently brought in.
Yeah, I'll agree with one of the things you said there about, obviously, in my opinion, I think it's got to be relevant to the club's income. So I'd say something along the lines of allowing clubs to maybe allocate 70% of their generated income into the playing budget. Obviously, I think last season Sunderland made between 10 to 15 million from season ticket sales alone. And then obviously you've got streaming revenue, merchandise, etc. So for me, for them to only be allowed to allocate a fifth of that the playing budget is somewhat unfair. Obviously, it was brought in an attempt to make EFL clubs more sustainable, but personally, I don't think it's done that. When you look at the bigger clubs in the league, you like Ipswich, Portsmouth, obviously Sunderland, I just think it's done the opposite. All it's done for me is unfairly level the playing fields. Michael, what are your views on it?
I do agree with what Tom said, that in principle, I don't mind the salary cap, because clubs ultimately, if you look at what happened at Bury, for example, I'm pretty sure we don't want another Bury situation. Although, given what's happening with COVID, we don't know what the implication could be down the road for certain clubs. Obviously, Tom will probably know more than me about the status of some of these clubs. But in saying that, I do get in principle the idea behind the salary cap, that you have to watch what you spend, and I can understand why. But what I agree, what you two have said is spot on, which is that it should have been down to the income that is relevant to what a club earns. For example, Sunderland, I believe, and Tom, please correct me if I'm talking rubbish on this. We were in for, say, the likes of Luke Garbutt and Scott Fraser before the cap was implemented. Now, I'm pretty sure, I think we would have had a good chance of getting both of those had it not been for the salary cap. So, but in saying that, once that's in place, that's gone. You know, I mean, obviously there's the issue of Luke Garbutt joining Blackpool, which couldn't have been for very much money. So I would wonder why Sunderland didn't go back in for him, unless we spent more of our allocated budget than Blackpool had. I don't know. But so I get it in principle there. But like you said, it's just, for me, there's leveling the playing field, and then there's restricting what a club can actually do when they can actually do a lot more. So, for example, we're having to now think, and I know we probably pick on them a lot. We think we have to think the same way the likes of Rochdale or Accrington Stanley, for instance. And it's like, well,
They do get mentioned a lot, Accrington, don't they?
Yeah, but that's the benchmark, unfortunately. And you know, it's actually quite like Accrington. They seem a good family, community-friendly club, and actually seem a real. The trip down there last season when I went was pretty good. But why should Sunderland have to be restricted? And not just us, Portsmouth, Ipswich could even put Hull in that equation, who've just come down from the Championship. There's other clubs in there, like even Peterborough as well. You know, why should they have to be restricted because of what other clubs want? Now, I agree again, in principle, salary cap, no issue. But I think how it's implemented, like Tom said, was wrong for me. It should have been based on what each club's income is and then judged individually from there.
Yeah. Obviously, the cap does have certain allowances, so any contracts that were signed before the introduction of the cap don't count in full to the allotted budget. So in Sunderland's case, if you take Aidan McGeady, for example, I'd imagine he's probably the biggest earner at the club, but obviously only a small percentage of his wage actually counts towards a total. But if he was to sign a new contract at the club, his new wage would have to fit within the cap, which obviously, Tom, you've mentioned there, when you average it out, it's about $1,700 per person, per player. I mean, Denver Hume, Jordan Willis, and I think there's another one, Luke O'Nien, that's it. They're all out of contract in the summer, so obviously this would apply to them if we were to offer them new contracts. Tom, with that in mind, do you think that puts added pressure on the club to get promoted this season?
Well, yes, it does, but the players, you've got to think about the players as well, and the PFA. This is why I don't think it. This is why I think it's unenforceable. They can't say to a player who's on, let's say, he's on $5,000 a week, and to sign a new contract, he's got to more than half his wage if he wants to stay, because someone might say, oh yeah, okay, well he can go to the Championship. Well, what if no Championship clubs want him? You're restricting his pay, which you cannot do that in life. So I think that's why I think it's unenforceable. Yes, it would. There's pressure on us to go. I think there was actually more pressure on us to go up last season than this season, to be honest, because I think now our wage bill is going down and down and down, and our higher earners are their contract is starting to run down as well. So I think actually the pressure to go up is actually getting less and less. Mm-hmm. But even though as fans, our desperation is getting more and more. But I don't think you can't say to a player, I mean, I believe that before lockdown, Luke O'Nien was he'd been offered a new contract, which was, I think it was somewhere around £5,000 a week. Now, £5,000 a week in League One is a lot, and that's the most that Sunderland want to pay on players. And lockdown happened, so everything got delayed, and now the salary cap comes in, and we can't offer him £5,000 a week. So unless he gets a move to the Championship, he can't get what he was worth only a few months ago, and was about to sign a new contract. So I honestly don't think that we can be punished if we fail this current system.
Yeah. Obviously, the salary cap's one thing that's impacted, EFL clubs in general, but the other thing that's impacted clubs pretty much all around the world is obviously spectators not being allowed into stadiums. I think you have to go back to March for the last time that fans were allowed in stadiums to a certain extent. Obviously, since then, games have been played behind closed doors. There's been a few pilot events here and there, but Michael, I asked Nick this last week, and he wasn't really sure. But do you still think in the current climate there's still some form of home advantage?
I still think there could be. I think that it depends. It depends on for me, it depends entirely on the players' mindsets. If you look at Sunderland, for example, home. I'm not saying it's an excuse, and it shouldn't be an excuse, really. But the fact is, I think some players might be intimidated. Even some players we've got in the squad might be not intimidated, but a bit overawed and overwhelmed by a 30,000 attendance at the stadium, like for instance. Now, it could work in two ways. You could either lose the team, the fans driving you on, or you could lose the potential backlash or criticism you could get when a pass is misplaced. And by the way, that's not me having a dig at the fans, because you're not gonna be happy clappers if you lose the ball, are you? You know, but I think they very well could be. I think they're very good. And actually, one of the reasons, obviously, it's having an impact on a lot of different clubs, but home advantage for us, for example, that could benefit us away from home when we play games away. Say when we go to Swindon or Rochdale, Gillingham, the next few away games, they don't have fans cheering them on. Now, no, we don't either, but obviously away games are. Percentage of fans in the ground would be probably up to 10%, maybe even less than or maybe slightly more. But either way, it's going to be not as much compared to home fans. So it could work I think there still could be home advantage, but it depends what way you play that. It depends what your mindset is going into games.
Yeah, and I can't remember which game it was, but I think Ian Wright was one of the pundits on one of the games recently. It might have been the England game, actually. I think it might have been an England game, and he was saying, as a player, if there was no fans, he wouldn't be able to motivate himself. He wouldn't be able to get himself up for the occasion. Michael, do you think that is a fair way of putting it, or do you think players should be motivated just to play the game anyway?
I think as a professional, you should be motivated anyway. If you're not motivated, then you're probably in the wrong sport. But I would imagine majority of players will be motivated anyway. But I would imagine that some players thrive off it. If you look again, Chris Maguire is a good example. Chris Maguire, to me, is someone who probably thrives off the crowd being there, or someone would love the idea of fans being behind him, especially at home. So it just depends on what mindset a player is, what their mentality is, how they approach crowds being there. It's all individualistic for me, but I do kind of get what Ian Wright was saying, that it's not the same thing. I'm sure for players, it is not the same. I mean, I'm sure Tom's probably interviewed players, or Sky have interviewed players. I'd imagine they probably say it's not the same thing without fans being there. One way or another, it's just totally different.
Yeah. Well, I've just mentioned there, a few English clubs have held pilot events, in recent months. Off the top of my head, I think Brighton played Chelsea in a pre-season friendly. I think there was a couple in League One as well did them. And obviously Boris Johnson said a phased return of fans would begin in October. But with the rise of coronavirus cases, this meant it was put on hold. In the last few months, schools have reopened, pubs have reopened, cinemas have reopened, and people have been encouraged to visit them recently. And of course, the Eat Out to Help Out scheme, which was brought in to save the hospitality sector. However, absolutely nothing is being done to save the footballing world or to help it. Tom, personally for you, right now, can you see any reason not to allow football fans in stadiums?
Well, football clubs have done so much work to make sure that their stadiums or their grounds are COVID ready. They've got one-way systems. At Sunderland, you've had to season ticket holders have had to register in a kind of bubble, all right, so they can sit with six family members or people that they live with. They've capped their season tickets at 12,000, which means that in a 49,000 seater stadium, it's a low percentage that will be allowed in, and all of these season ticket holders, who it's safe for them to sit with because they've registered themselves with the club. They've put all that effort in, sold fewer season tickets than they usually would, so that's less revenue, and then have been told, actually, you can't start again at the start of October. It might not be till March. Well, March isn't that far from the end of the season. It might be a whole season without fans. And if the plan was to get fans back in by October, and all of these clubs have abided by the rules, they've done everything they possibly can to get clubs in a reduced capacity. So again, they're still not making as much money as they could do, but they've put all this hard work in. They'll have spent money on signage and things like that. I'd imagine that the sort of bars and the bars, like the snack bars and stuff, won't be allowed to open as well. That's less revenue again. You're probably not allowed to open the club shop if you've got one at your ground. Yeah. But they've still done all of this to be ready and then be told you can't. But then you're getting told, oh, but you should all go to the cinema to save that industry. Mm-hmm. Well, yes, you should. But if you can do that, you can go to a 49,000 seater stadium and socially distance with 12,000 of you in.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying anything that anyone hasn't said already, but I can't believe that there hasn't been a change of mind yet to let fans in, because it can 100% be done safely.
Did you see this? There's a petition, I think, on the gov.uk, whatever the official government website. There's a petition to allow fans into grounds, and it's got nearly, at the time I've seen it last, it said it's got nearly 200,000 signatures, which by this point it may well have gone past that mark. So God knows. I mean, apparently every petition that's got over 100,000 has to be considered in Parliament for debate. Now I don't know if there's anything in there. I don't know if there's anything.
It is. Yeah.
Well, I've signed it, and they do have to have the debate. It doesn't mean that they have to allow it, but I just don't. Surely the government have had all of the sort of details of what clubs have done to get themselves ready to let fans in, and if they've still said, no, you can't have fans, I mean, it's well worth talking about in Parliament, but I don't see them changing their mind. They should, but I don't see it happening.
No, probably not.
I think for me, it's a case, obviously, like we've touched on there, they are encouraging people to go to the cinemas in groups. They're encouraging people to eat out, to, save the hospitality sector. People aren't allowed in football stadiums, so personally I'm not, but I know a lot of people I know are. They're going in groups to the pub to watch the game instead, where you're indoors, you're drinking, you're not going to be socially distanced. So for me, to reopen the stadiums when everything else is open is a no-brainer. It's safe, and obviously the games have been played behind closed doors since March now, so clubs have had, I think that makes it about 8 months to plan for reopening, which would probably, for most clubs, I'd imagine, make it one of the safest places to actually be in the world right now.
Yeah, I mean, I went to the last game. I went to Bristol Rovers away before we got locked down, and I mean, the away end was packed as ever. There's no way you could have that, all right? Everyone understands that. It was packed. Everyone's on top of each other. That ground is, it's all, we were all in a standing area. You can't have that, right? Everybody knows that. Everyone's being realistic. But since then I've been going to non-league games. I'm going to a non-league game today, and they can only let in a certain amount of people. But because no one can go to a professional match, more people are going to non-league. Now that's a good thing. That means that they're getting more money in than they usually would. That's a good thing. But they don't have the infrastructure to make sure that people do socially distance. They can't because their grounds are so small. And they're actually getting more fans than they usually do. Now I'm going because I like going, and I will abide by the government rules when I'm there. But it's a lot harder to do at a non-league ground with very little seating and sometimes only one entrance, which is also the exit. Whereas at the Stadium of Light, you've got loads of entrances. If there's only 12,000 at the Stadium of Light, which holds 49,000, there's no reason why you need to be anywhere near at any point somebody else who isn't in your bubble.
No.
And if I'm saying that I feel that I can socially distance and play by the rules at a non-league ground without all of those rules in place and without that infrastructure, I can definitely do it at the Stadium of Light.
Yeah. Well, you've just touched on it there. Obviously, the non-league grounds are getting more supporters in, and I think, off the top of my head, I think it might have been Gateshead, or it was a team around the area. I think one of the games the season just gone, I think that attendance had tripled, maybe even quadrupled, obviously with fans not being allowed at the Premier League ground. So it's been interesting to see what happens.
I don't think they're allowed at Gateshead either, though, are they? Or because they're National League North, aren't they? I think that National League definitely aren't allowed fans yet. Maybe National League North are in that case. I'm not sure, but I don't think they are. But either way, I can tell you from experience that non-league games are getting more fans in, and that, I mean, I do see that as a positive. But there's nowhere near. It's a lot harder to abide by the rules at non-league ground than it is at a professional club.
Yeah. Well, moving on to Sunderland, as I said we would. Obviously, it is the international break, so what better time to reflect on the season so far? Looking at the league table, Sunderland currently sit fourth. 4 games played, 2 wins and 2 draws. In terms of opposition, in terms of the teams we've played, it's possibly one of the hardest, if not the hardest, start of the season we could have had. Michael, how pleased have you been with the start of the season?
I think I'm pleased with 3 of the 4 results. The only result I'm not pleased with is Bristol Rovers, because I still believe we should be beating them if we want to go up. But obviously, we don't have the God-given right to beat Bristol Rovers. We had to earn the right, and we didn't do it. As far as the start of the season goes, I think there's been quite a few conflicting narratives from Sunderland fans regarding the last 2 results, particularly with Peterborough. Like, oh, the result was great, but the performance wasn't very good. And then the week against Charlton, it's the exact opposite narrative. Like, oh yeah, the performance was good, yeah, but we didn't win. So it's like, and it does annoy me and I know that's football fans, but it's just subjectively annoys me when people can't find a consistency in how they view games. Now, I know obviously every game's different, but if you were to look at it, Oxford were 90 minutes away from getting promoted last season. Peterborough have signed, well, I think Peterborough have got one of the best, if not the best, attack line in the league. So to keep a clean sheet with them and beat them is a big result, especially we hadn't beaten them since dropping into League One before that game. And then you've got Charlton. Now, yes, we should have won. But the fact is, when you're down to 10 men the last 20 minutes, a lot of teams will crumble because they can't. Because mentally, you have to be extra focused and extra switch on to make up for that player you've lost. So, as far as I'm concerned, too, I would have liked. I did say personally on my own channel that I did think 8 points was the minimum we should be looking at out of those 4 games. But I did have those beating Bristol Rovers in mind when I did say that. So, I think we've had a pretty good start. I think that. It's one where, if you just look at who we've played, like look at Ipswich, there's a good example. Look at who they've played at the start. They played Wigan, they played Bristol Rovers, Rochdale and MK Dons. Now they've got 10 points, and I would argue they are not easy games, but not as on paper difficult games as what we've had. Again, on paper, because anything can happen on the day, obviously, but I'm fairly happy with the start we've made, as long as we then kick on in the games that we've got coming up. And I think Sunderland, at least there has been a game. I don't know what you guys think, but I think I can tell there's been a plan almost every time we've gone out on the pitch. We look so good at the back. It's not like we haven't created chances, by the way. I think only Peterborough, we didn't really create vast amounts of opportunities, which definitely did against Charlton, and we should have won because of that. And we did against Oxford. And as poor as I thought we did against Bristol Rovers, we did them as well. So I'm fairly encouraged so far.
Yeah. Performance-wise, obviously, I don't think you're going to say the Bristol Rovers game now, but has there been one performance that stood out to you the most? I know you've just said there the Charlton game wasn't the best performance, but for me, I think in the first half, that was probably the best football I think I've seen us play this season.
Yeah, in the first half, definitely. I think in the first half, we definitely, Danny Graham, obviously, and by the way, I think Danny Graham will come good this season, but he knows himself he should be scoring those chances. But over the whole game, I couldn't nail one performance over the whole 90 minutes, but I'd say second half at Oxford, I would say first half against Charlton both were very, very good. Against 2 good sides, against 2 very decent sides. You could probably say Peterborough defensively, even though Peterborough obviously hit the bar in that game, but that's not, so over the 90 minutes, I couldn't nail one performance, but if I had to pick, I probably would go along with Charlton first half, just because I could see we made Charlton look very average. Now, maybe they sat off us, but you can only play. But how do we know that's not us not letting them play? How do we know that's us not letting them set the tempo? So I'd say Charlton first half was the best we played, and I think we played really well. Yeah.
Would you agree with that, Tom? Charlton first half, best we've played?
Yeah, but I loved the Peterborough game because it reminded me of having Sam Allardyce in charge.
I can see it.
Completely solid at the back. Didn't look like conceding against a very, very strong front line. Peterborough have always got a strong front line. We didn't look like conceding. And as the game went on, you just thought the goal's going to come. and it just reminded me of Allardyce, where you're sitting there watching Sunderland, thinking, actually, we look quite comfortable here, which is very rare. So I actually think the Peterborough game was best because it was so professional, and we had a clear plan, and the plan worked. But Charlton, we could have blown them away in that first half. We could have been outside. So it's a bit frustrating that we weren't, but we certainly looked more dangerous going forward, and again also looked solid at the back. And I was kind of feeling the same thing as the Peterborough game. I felt that the goal was coming, and then when we got the red card, that kind of ruined that. But yeah, the Peterborough one purely because it reminded me of Allardyce.
Yeah. Obviously, Michael, you've just said there the fan reaction, I'll say, kind of frustrates you a little bit in terms of rating the performance and rating the result. But obviously, performances don't win you games. The results win you games. So, you know, we beat Peterborough, who I'd expect to be up there, probably top 6, possibly even in the top 2. Who knows? Charlton, again, they're a strong team. They've got some strong players. Obviously, they've just signed Marcus Maddison, and I can't think who the striker is they've just signed from Cardiff.
Omar Bogle.
Yeah, that's it. Just signed him. I know I don't think his goal scoring record's brilliant, but I think he is someone that will thrive in this league, and I think he will cause issues for people's defence. Obviously, Oxford, like you've said there, Michael, you know, they were an hour or so away from promotion last season. So they're another really strong team. They've made some good additions to the squad as well. So, you know, to be at this point of the season in the league unbeaten with 2 wins, we haven't conceded a goal from open play.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's a positive place to be in.
I would say so. I think, well, obviously, I'm one of the people that champions keeping clean sheets most out of anyone. Probably because, although I don't play football to a good standard, I'm not very good myself. I play in defence because that's the position I'm most comfortable in. And defence, people underestimate sometimes how important keeping clean sheets is. Now, I don't want Sunderland over the course of the season to rely on keeping clean sheets to win games. Obviously, I want us to score more goals. But if you look back at say the Jack Ross season, like you look at the season we got the playoff final and lost at the last minute, we had something like 19 draws that season, I believe it was. 19 draws. Now, apart from Barnsley, because we drew 0-0 that game, apart from Barnsley, every single one of those draws we would have conceded goals in. Now, if you look at all the 1-1s we had under Jack Ross, for example, keep clean sheets in those games, we probably get promoted. And, you know, and that's one of the... So I do agree that performances definitely don't win you games, which kind of then baffled us to why people were so bothered by the Peterborough performance when we won the game. Because I didn't think against Peterborough, like Tom said, I agree with him. I think that against Peterborough, I don't think anyone should have expected us to go and swashbuckle and try and outplay Peterborough, because we would have got beat if we tried to play like that, I think. And it's all down to how you approach individual games. But I do agree with you. Like, defensively, that's a very solid start. Like I said, if you told me after the Bristol Rovers game, you're going to keep 3 clean sheets against Oxford, Peterborough and Charlton, I wouldn't have believed you. I'd have snapped your hand off for it. But keeping clean sheets is vitally important. And it's one that, it just goes to show, for example, how important Bailey Wright is to the team. Just, when you look at him, you can tell he's one of those players. And I would even put Jordan Willis in that category. I think they look a class above this level in at the back. And therefore, as long as Sunderland keep clean sheets, I would fancy us to win 9 times out of 10, because we always have it in us to get 1 or 2 goals in us. It's just that Charlie, probably for me, was the exception. I think any other day we probably would have put those chances away. So it's all about getting the balance right. You need to score goals, obviously, to win promotion. But there's no point scoring 3 goals if you're going to keep conceding 4. You have to find a middle ground and a balance. And keeping clean sheets always gives you, at worst, a draw. So it gives you a chance to stay in the game, basically.
Yeah. Well, we haven't seen awfully much of our new signings so far this season. Obviously, Morgan Feeney came in from Everton, primarily as a backup, and obviously he's picked up an injury playing for under-23s, so he's out for a few months. Jamali came in. I think he did come in as, you know, to stake a claim for a starting place on the left-hand side of the defence, but obviously hasn't played any minutes. And as some of you will be aware, he did pick up an injury on international duty. You know, I don't know the severity of that injury yet, but he could be out for weeks, he could be out for months, I'm not really sure. Obviously, Remy Matthews came in as a number 2 goalkeeper. Aidan O'Brien joined from Millwall, and Danny Graham from Blackburn. Tom, now we've had the chance to see the team in action a few times. You know, we've had 4 league games, 3 cup games. Do you think the squad has what it takes to get promoted, or do you still think we're missing something?
No, I think we're, in terms of bringing another player in before the EFL deadline, we still need another left back stroke left wing back, because we've only got Denver Hume, unless Parkinson sees Elliot Embleton as a left wing back, which he could do. He's equally good right and left foot. I think it's quite amazing that he takes corners sometimes with his right, sometimes with his left.
Yeah.
That it might be sad, but that really impresses me. We
Not
know
many
he's
players
right
that I think of would do that, to be fair.
Yeah, him, Santi Cazorla, and there's one other. There's two. There's a few people who, I think Bobby Zamora scored a penalty with both feet as well. Obafemi Martins used to do it as well, the former Newcastle and Birmingham striker. But there's not very many people who can do it with both feet. Now, if he's played as an attacking right back for England's under-20s, I think it was, you'd think he could play as a wing back. And if he's good with both feet, Parkinson might see him as the challenge to Denver Hume for left wing back. But I don't know that. That's just a guess. If he doesn't see him as that, he sees him playing further forward, which is his more natural position, he will need another left wing back. But I think that's all we need. I think we're well stocked in every area, possibly even overstocked in some areas. So I think we just need that one more player. If he doesn't see Embleton in that position, I think the squad's all right. I don't look at it and think, right, we're definitely getting promoted. I don't see it as that good, but I certainly think that the depth is there.
Yeah. Do you mind if I ask Tom a question? Oh,
go for it.
I was saying, Tom, from obviously you'll get some noises from Sunderland. What noise is there? Any noises from Sunderland that we are any particular left backs or any areas we're looking to sign left backs from, or is it the salary cap as we haven't got much wiggle room left for a left back that we're looking to convert? Say, I don't know, like you said, Elliot Embleton, for example, to a left wing back. Is that
I think
sense?
If we're gonna bring anyone in now, I'd imagine it will be a loan from the Premier League, who and they will pay all of his wages.
Yeah,
that is my guess. That's not definitely the case. I can't think of any more free transfers that are out there, because we didn't go for Mitchell or Garbett. I think it would be, and we haven't loaned anyone yet. I think we might loan a Premier League left back, but be paying minimal, if any, of their wages.
Yeah. On the subject of left back there, I'm not sure how true it is, but I know there was a rumour going around that, I know Parkinson, I'm not sure who he was speaking to at the time, but he did say someone had been to the academy, but he wasn't up to fitness and he wasn't ready to join the team. And I've seen a lot of rumours that was Jordan Obita, formerly of Reading, the left back. Tom, do you know anything? If any substance to that?
I don't know anything about it, but he lives near me, so thanks for telling me, because I can find out. The non-league game that I'm going to today, he does his what is it, that cryogenic chamber, whatever it's called, which we used to have. You go in, and it's free.
That's the one. That's the one that. Oh, what's he called?
Defoe used to do it, but he Obita goes to the ground to. Well, he used to. It's gone now, but he used to go to the ground I'm going to today to get it done. So I can probably find that out for you. But he would fit the bill in terms of he is primarily a winger who can play left back. So really, he should be perfect for left wing back. But I don't know whether he was there. I don't know whether it was him who was there or not. I would be. He just never, for some, at Reading, and I live near Reading. He was always someone who, he's going to come good. He's going to be some player, and it just never happened for one reason or another. Whether it was him who was at the Academy of Light, and whether he is unfit, I mean that would be a shame if that is the case. But I don't know. But without, off the top of my head, I wouldn't be disappointed with that.
Obviously, Danny Graham returned, and he's played a fair bit since he returned. Michael, what have you made of him in the games he's played? Do you think he's the striker we should be persisting with?
Well, I've said constantly on my Twitter handle that I do think Graham and Grigg, for example, is a partnership. If we're playing with a front two, Graham and Grigg is a partnership I would like to see us persist with, at least for a good couple of games. Because one of the things that Parkinson is doing that isn't helping is that he changes the strikers for almost every game. He changes them. Now, I don't know whether he's doing this with the opponents in mind, and in which case I don't mind that too much. But yes, to answer your question, I do think Graham is someone we should be looking to persist with. If you look against Charlton, he had at least 2, maybe 3 or 4 really good goal-scoring chances that he should have put away. And even at 35, I know I isolate Charlie White a lot, and I won't do it too much here because it'll be boring. It'll be boring for everybody, so I won't do it. But Charlie White, unfortunately, as much as he tries, and he is a trier, it doesn't seem to me to be intelligent enough on the pitch to get himself in the right positions to have those chances in front of the goal. Whereas I could just tell watching Graham against Charlton, he knows where to be. And this is granted because he's been promoted from this level. He's scored goals in double figures. I think it's both seasons he's been at this level. Correct me if I'm wrong on any of that.
Yeah, he's scored a lot in this league, and obviously scored a lot in the Championship as well. Yeah,
well then I think Graham will still add quite a bit to the team. And I think we need to forget what he was like in the first spell that he had here, because although it's frustrating and he wasn't very good in the first spell, that's a completely different level of opposition defenders he's coming up against. Although he's older, for me that doesn't mean that he still hasn't got it for League One. I think he will. Maybe I'm being naive there, but I think so.
Yeah. Well, moving from the top of the pitch down to the bottom of the pitch briefly, and I've talked about this with John on previous podcasts, but Michael, what do you make of the goalkeeping situation at the club? Obviously, Remy Matthews joined from Bolton on a free transfer. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to say he's impressed because he hasn't. Obviously, he made a mistake in pre-season, and I think when I wrote my match report against Carlisle, I think I gave him a 1 out of 10. Obviously, he gave away a penalty. I think it was their second or third goal. He was stood behind the line. He parried it into his goal. He just didn't look confident at all. And I've also questioned Lee Burge at times this season. Obviously, gave away the penalty of Bristol Rovers, which I could watch 150 times a day, and I still wouldn't know why he did it, because the player wasn't even facing goal. He was moving away from goal. He's just jumped on his back. But yeah, what do you make of the goalkeeping situation?
I think Lee Burge... Look, I'm not going to pretend Lee Burge has been brilliant this season, because I don't think he has. I don't think he's as bad as I've seen some fans make him out to be. I think, for example, last season when he came in for John McLaughlin, I don't think there was much difference between McLaughlin or Burge, personally. But this season, yeah, obviously, that penalty decision against Bristol Rovers, I will never get why Lee Burge did that. I don't know if it was a rush of blood. I don't know if it was just adrenaline taking over or anything, because that unsettled Sunderland for a good part of an hour.
It was 87 minutes or something, really.
Yeah, basically. But what, I've always said that I think, although the last line, we'll know from the Championship season that obviously your last line of defence is your keeper. But for me, as a defender, your defence is there to stop it getting to the goalkeeper. Now, if the defence does their job in front of them, then hopefully your goalkeeper isn't going to be too busy. Now, obviously, there are going to be games where your goalkeeper is going to be busy. That's just natural. You're not going to, the wall in front of you is not going to be impenetrable. It's going to break down occasionally. So, Burge, I do think Burge, I think it was a couple of times against Peterborough he did it. He carried the ball into the danger zone in the 18-yard box, which was like, there was a couple of times, and I'm no goalkeeper, so shoot me down if I'm talking garbage. But for me, it looked like there was a couple of times he parries shots that he could catch, or he makes them look harder work than they are. Yeah. But in general, you also can't ignore that he's helped him in the defence. He's part of a back line that's kept 3 successive clean sheets in the league against 3 good sides. Matthews, as much as I don't want to get on his back straight away, obviously, but he hasn't looked very convincing. He obviously spilled the goal in against Carlisle in the friendly. I think apparently he did a miss kick that led to Villa under-21s getting the penalty against us. And yeah, look, he did a similar thing to Burge against Bristol Rovers against Carlisle midweek. And I wasn't convinced by the second Carlisle goal, where he basically spilled the shot into his own net when you'd argue he could catch it. Now, again, I'm not a goalkeeper, so I couldn't tell you if that's definitely accurate or not. But let's just hope Burge doesn't get injured, put it that way. I'm hoping that if Matthews does have to come in, I'm hoping the defence still does their job as well as they have done, because then Matthews, hopefully, either goalkeeper won't be given as much to do consistently enough across the season anyway. Yeah.
Obviously, for me, I think goal scoring is the major concern so far this season. I think anyone would say that. A few stats from the season so far as well, according to SofaScore. We average 47% possession. We've had an average of 16 shots per game with 6 on target. Obviously, we've scored 4 goals in 4 games, but none of our strikers have got themselves on the score sheet. Aidan O'Brien obviously joined the club from Millwall in the summer. He's missed 3 big chances so far this season, which is actually the second highest in the league. O'Brien's never been an out-and-out goal scorer, but someone of his experience and ability, I will say, because he did score goals for Millwall. For me, he's got to finish the chances he's been getting. Michael, what have you made of O'Brien since he signed as well?
I've liked him. I've liked how industrious he is and how he gets himself about the pitch. And I thought he worked quite well with Graham last week. But in saying that, look, the chance, I'm going to be optimistic and hoping that's down to rustiness, because O'Brien won't have played as much football before signing for us. I wouldn't think he would have done. I'm pretty sure he didn't. I mean, Tom, correct me on this. Did he play much for Millwall in lockdown, like the end of last season? Because I don't think he did, but I could be wrong.
No, I don't know. He wasn't a regular starter for them anyway, so I doubt it.
I mean, obviously, I think he played some 83 times in the last 3 seasons in the Championship. I'm quite sad because I looked that up. But when you look at him in League One, I would like to think he should be good enough to at least contribute with a few goals. I like O'Brien, but if he continues to squander chances, then maybe just get Kevin Phillips in as a finishing coach or something, and just try and get him to perfect the try and get him to finish the chances he's had. I like him, but yeah, he does need to finish the chances he does get.
Yeah. Obviously, we do have 4 senior strikers at the club who, throughout their career, have scored goals regularly. Obviously, Charlie White scored quite a lot for Bradford when he played. Will Grigg scored goals wherever he's been. Danny Graham scored goals in the Premier League, Championship, League One, but obviously a spell at Sunderland is probably the only time he hasn't scored goals. And I think aside from a goal against Villa, he hasn't scored in the league or any other goals yet. Tom, what do you think the lack of goals comes down to? Do you think it is a case of confidence? Do you think, strikers, they're playing one game, they're getting subbed up after an hour, and then they're not playing for 2 or 3 games? Do you think that has an impact, or do you think it is a case of ability?
No, it's the formation, 100%. There's the formation that we play, which I'm not a fan of, but Parkinson's decided that is what we're doing, so stick with it. But it only has 3 attacking players. Yeah. Because you've got at the moment, he's either playing 2 strikers and 1 behind, or 1 striker and 2 behind. But really, that's 3 forwards. Yeah. That's it. And it's like, they might get some help from midfield. Well, normally our midfielders sit quite deep, and wing backs, they're not wingers. They're there to defend and attack. Yeah. So it's because there's not enough. It's because there's not enough forward players. I don't like 3 at the back anyway. It can make you more solid. If you play 4-4-2 or 4-2-3-1, you've got, a 4-2-3-1, you've got 4 attackers on the pitch, because your number 10 should be an attacker, and your 2 wingers are really wide forwards, and you've got your striker. So I think it's the formation. But I've just said how happy I was that we looked comfortable and never looked like conceding against Peterborough, Charlton, or Oxford. So I can't have it both ways. But it is simply the fact that we've only got 3 forwards on the pitch, rather than in other formations where you can have 4. In terms of the strikers being used, I think it's been a bit harsh to keep changing the striker each game. The striker, Grigg started the first game. He should have been given at least 3 games, preferably 5, but at the start of the season, probably 3. And if he hadn't scored, then you give either Graham or White a go. Yeah. But we hadn't done that. We changed the first 3 games. We had a different one each time. Then Graham came back in for the 4th game. I think one of them, Graham's now started the last one. Let him start the next 2. Then he's had 3 in a row. And then if he doesn't score, then you go to Grigg or White and do it that way.
Grigg was a weird one for me, because obviously he played, I think Hull was our first competitive game of the season, and whilst it did finish 0-0, he scored 2 goals, which, in my opinion, should never have been disallowed. Obviously, the offside one was not offside, so that definitely should have stood. The other one was, I think it was a foul on the keeper, which is, it's opinion-based. Some people will say, yeah, it's a foul, give the benefit to the keeper. Some will say it isn't, it's soft. But both were disallowed. But he played against Bristol. Didn't do much wrong for me. I don't think we got the ball up that end of the pitch too much. But then to have dropped him completely, I don't think he played at all at Oxford. Don't think he played at all at Peterborough. He came on against Charlton. Tom Flanagan got sent off, so he got pushed out to the right wing. And then, I think it's a bit harsh on Will Grigg, because, I think out of the strikers that we do have, if I was to have faith in any of them scoring 10, 15, 20 goals in a season, it would be him, because he's done it every season he's played in this league. He's done it with Wigan.
Last season when he played one up front and two just off him, so Gooch and Maguire would play just off Wyke or then briefly Lafferty. Mm-hmm. If he decides to play two up front and one behind, he can actually have Graham and Grigg together if he does it that way. And then in behind, you've got either O'Brien, Gooch, Maguire. I know he likes to push Scowen a little bit forward. I'd have Scowen deeper. But he does actually have the option of putting two out-and-out strikers up there with one in behind, which, I suppose O'Brien's been playing further forward as well. So it is actually possible to not just play one of Graham, Wyke and Grigg. I don't think you can play all three, but I think you can play two.
Yeah. Well, obviously, Carlisle midweek, and obviously, Michael, you've just said there, for you, Danny Graham and Will Grigg would be your two partnership. But obviously, I think it was our fifth goal. Jack Diamond scored it. Long ball went over the top. Danny Graham held it up. His first touch was excellent as well. Held it up, laid it off to Jack Diamond, who smashed it in. And if Will Grigg gets that type of service from a strike partner, I think he will score goals. Obviously, through his time at Wigan and MK Dons as well, a lot of his goals do come in the box. He's not someone that's going to run the length of the pitch, taking 6 or 7 players on, then smashing it top corner. He is a goal poacher. He is a finisher. And I think Danny Graham is, out of him and Charlie Wyke, I think Graham's the one more capable of holding the ball up. And obviously we've seen he can lay the ball off. He is smarter than Wyke. And he doesn't give it anywhere near as many fouls away as Wyke. So I think I'd agree with Michael in that case that Danny Graham and Will Grigg should be our partnership. But a lot of people also question the creative capabilities of our squad this season. Chris Maguire is obviously the main man in terms of that. And again, going back to SofaScore, they've give him an average rating so far this season of just over 8 out of 10, which actually makes him the highest rated player in the league. George Honeyman is third, which will surprise a lot of people. Obviously scored yesterday against Fleetwood. Tom, how important do you think Maguire is to this team? Do you think he can be the deciding factor as to whether we get promoted or not?
Maguire is vital, and he has been ever since he signed. He did well when he was playing on the left or right wing, but now that he plays, his best position was always, even in the first season in League One under Jack Ross, when he was playing just behind Josh Madger. That was our best spell, because actually Maguire kind of plays as a second striker. It was basically 4-4-2, even though that's not how you'd write it down. That's not how Jack Ross would have written it down on his whiteboard in the dressing room. But Maguire was playing alongside Madger, and it was perfect because Maguire's touch is brilliant, his movement is brilliant, his finishing is very good, and he knows, in terms of creating chances, he's brilliant. So yes, I think he is vital. I always liked it when him and Gooch were playing behind that one striker. But if you're going to have two strikers and one in behind, for me, it would be Maguire.
Yeah. Denver Hume is another key player for me in terms of our creativity. Obviously, him and Maguire have created most of our chances this season. Michael, how impressed have you been with his development so far this season? What changes have you noticed in his game from last year?
I think he likes to get the rough side of the game. It gets stuck into the tough tackling side of the game a bit more. Now, I'm not saying obviously he didn't last season, because I thought Denver Hume was one of our brighter prospects last season, actually. But for this season, I think he's shown a lot of maturity, and he seems to be a bit less intimidated by opposition players. And I mean, like, he's probably looks a bit bulked up. He looks a bit more he looks like he's got a bit more physical. Maybe I'm looking at the game wrong.
Looks more like a footballer.
On him, and I think that I think his game intelligence has got better as well. I think if you look at the game against Peterborough, Hume won us that game essentially because he drove in down the left hand side, cut in, and forced a penalty out of Peterborough, which then helped us to win the game. I like Hume a lot. I think obviously sometimes his crossing can be a bit suspect, but he's young. He's 21, maybe 22. Obviously he's going to be at a point where he needs to start developing that, but I like him. I think he started to become accustomed to the wing back role and can actually get up and down the pitch. And I think his defending's been a lot better as well. Again, he's a young lad. He's someone who's going to need the proper development to actually nurture as a player. And so I have been impressed with Denver Hume. And like we said, look, creativity has been an issue somewhat, but I would think it's not been as much of an issue, because if it was, we wouldn't have been creating the chances that we were in the first place. Maguire obviously is vital, but yeah, but to answer your question, Denver Hume, yeah, I've been very impressed, and hopefully he stays injury-free or suspension-free, and long may this continue.
Yeah. Well, obviously, Luke O'Nien plays on the other side as a right wing back, and last season I was impressed with him. I think he was one of our better players, and I'm still a big fan of him this season, but I don't think he's been as prominent in the starting 11 as he has been previously. He scored quite a few goals last season. I know he's got one against, I think it was Oxford, which will still probably go down as one of the best goals we scored this season. But Tom, what do you make of Luke O'Nien? Obviously, he is a very versatile player. He came to the club as a midfielder. He got moved out to right back. He got moved up to right wing back. And I think at Carlisle midweek, he played as a left centre back.
Yeah, I don't think he's a midfielder anymore. He can do it, but he's far more effective at right back or right wing back. What I like about him is he never goes missing. Actually, with the exception of one game since he's been here, in the Jack Ross season away at Wickham, he went missing in that game. He had a really bad game. Other than that, he always wants the ball. He's always showing for the ball. He goes, as a wing back, he goes up and down. He is a threat once he goes forward. He's not scared to tackle, and he always challenges for headers as well. So I like him. I don't think right wing back is a problem position. I think he could do it all season. If he was injured, Parkinson would probably put Gooch there. He's not as effective as a wing back because I prefer him going forward, but Gooch could play there, and there's of course Conor McLaughlin as well. But O'Nien, I think, is one of the most important players in the team, because he has just retrained himself from being a midfielder who was just would run all day. He's done it. He's now converted his game to being a right wing back, and I think he's done it really, really well. I have no issues at all down that side of the pitch.
Yeah. Into midfield, we've had multiple different combinations so far. Dobson's played, Ledbetter's played, Scowen and Power. Obviously, Power is team captain. I think Ledbetter's club captain. But Scowen and Ledbetter have played the last couple of games, and I think it's fair to say they've impressed. Ledbetter especially. Michael, which partnership do you think works the best, given the style of play we have adopted?
Well, at the moment, it's Scowen and Ledbetter, because I think both been Ledbetter for me has been one of our best players so far this season, which I didn't expect. And fair play to the guy, after everything he's been through off the pitch for the last 18 or so months, to come back and do this is incredible for him. So hopefully that continues for him. I think Ledbetter deserves a success this season, and by success I mean promotion more than any other player at the club at the moment. Probably, like I said, I like Max Power, but he does tend to sit a bit deeper and do a bit of sideways passing. Now, I don't think he's as bad as I've seen some people make him out to be, but I do think at the moment Scowen has to be in there, because I thought against Charlton he was also a really good player. I thought that he got himself down the wing a couple of times, put a good few crosses in. He gets himself forward. He's industrious in the middle. At the moment, it would be Scowen and Ledbetter for me. But obviously, is Dobson back from suspension now?
He is. Yeah, played his first game. Well, he played against Carlisle. I don't know if he was suspended. I don't think he would have been able to play in that game. But yeah, he was suspended against Bristol. He got suspended against Bristol, so I think it's Charlton, Peterborough and Oxford he's played. So yeah, he'll be back for Swindon, I think. We'll move on, and for me, I think it's hard to choose one player, but attackers aside, I think I've been impressed with the majority of the squad. Obviously, Maguire's up there, Ledbetter, Willis, but for me, Wright is the make or break in our side, and I think for me, he's the most important player in the team. Tom, for you, most important player in the team?
100%, no doubt about it. Him and Willis, excellent. Flanagan is better because he's alongside those two. And I think whoever comes in, I know Jamajli's injured. Flanagan's suspended for only one game, thankfully. So I'd imagine that either Brandon Taylor or Conor McLaughlin will play as the left side of the back three, unless he changes the formation. And I think whoever slots in will find it a lot more comfortable because they're next to Wright and Willis. And he is just an absolute rock, touch wood, and he needs to stay fit. I love Willis as well, but Wright makes it a lot easier. Having him alongside you will make it a lot easier for whoever comes in for this next game in for Flanagan.
Yeah. And Michael, yourself, who's your important player in this squad? Who do you think is the make or break?
I think Tom's covered it. You both have covered it. Bailey Wright. You saw the difference last season when he wasn't in the team. We crumbled a bit defensively too easily, in my opinion. But when Wright's in the team, his reading of the game, his interceptions, his ability to organise people, it's incredible. And something a majority of centre-backs should really have, the ability to organise others. But yeah, Bailey Wright, without question. You can tell he's a cut above this level, as is Willis.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. We will finish with this. Obviously, Swindon is our next league game. A game I would expect us to win, but Swindon have actually had quite a good start of the season. I think they've beat Burton and Rochdale so far. Tom, your predictions for that one on Saturday?
If we'd beaten Bristol Rovers and drawn the next 3, I wouldn't have been happy, but I wouldn't have been disappointed, right? So that would have been 6 points, and we've got 8, right? Swindon, we have to look to win it. We have to, and we have to go for it from the off, like we try to do against Charlton. I'm going to go for a win, but I'm not mega confident. But we have to be going for a win.
Score predictions. Going to push you for one.
Oh, okay.
I know some people don't like doing predictions, but I've got to push people for them.
Go on then. I'll go 2-1. I think we'll concede, but I think we'll win.
Michael, yourself?
Same score. I think we will concede from open, because as much as we haven't conceded from open play so far this season, there's going to be a point where that is going to stop. We are going to concede goals from open play, but like Tom said, we've got to be beating Swindon if you want to get promoted.
Yeah. I think in the podcast last week against Charlton, I said 3-0. I'm going to stick with 3-0. I think we can kick on next week, but obviously only time will tell. That is all we have time for today. Tom, Michael, I appreciate you coming on today.
No worries.
My pleasure. Anytime. Thank you.
We will be back again next week, obviously with the return of a reaction podcast, hopefully after a win. But until then, we will see. So appreciate you joining me, fellas. But until then, we will see you later.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, lads.
Take care.
Cheers.